Hey everybody, what's going on? Rob Cesternino back to wrap up season 2 of The Mole on Netflix. We have our mole, we have a winner, and a lot of surprises, I thought, in the final 2 episodes of The Mole 2024. Back with us, a guy full of surprises. It's Josh Wigler. Josh, how are you?
Yo, okay, yo, I'm full of surprises, yo. It's just because the mole said yo so many times. Has anyone ever said yo so many times?
I think probably.
The yo.
Yeah. Has a white guy in his 40s said it as much? I don't know.
Probably. I mean, honestly,
probably not.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
look,
yeah.
I think that's how you build rapport. I think.
That's just my impression of the mole. Here's my impression of the mole. Yo.
Yeah.
Loved it, by the way. Oh my god, I'm so excited to be here.
I really was very happy with these final 2 episodes of The Mole. Can't wait to talk about it here. And of course, back with us is Brooklyn Zed. Brooklyn Zed, how are you?
Yo, Brooklyn Zed.
Yo, hello. I know. I feel like it's the what's up of right now. I feel like we just got started. We just got started, and here we are at the end already with these
moles
drop schedule.
These mole seasons, they fly too fast. And yet maybe a good thing on this one, because I wonder actually now in hindsight, like how would the weekly have been on this season, considering like some of like the bingey qualities of it were like, okay, does the mole need work? Da, 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 da. And then I think we got to these last 2 episodes, and I can tell both of you and Jess, if you're listening out there, the great Jessica Liese, not able to be here today, within those first 5 minutes, after I had turned on Netflix, and I turned it on, and we were getting reveals of who had been doubly eliminated.
Yeah.
And one of those phones lights up red right away, and I'm smiling ear to ear and wondering what it's like. This was kind of my like somewhere out there moment. This was my Fievel moment as I was wondering how the reveal of a certain person going home was landing with Rob Cesternino, Brooklyn Zed, and Jessica Liese.
Okay, yeah. So, again, full mole spoilers. Okay, the entire season here is coming, so don't say that we ruined it for you. But
yes, we are live also, of course.
We're live. We're live here. We take your questions
we're here on the YouTubes.
Well. Okay. And
first question we got for the video version was from Angel. Is Josh in a chair store?
Are you in a chair store?
Yeah. I actually am. Good eyes from Angel. I'm just podcasting. No, I'm actually podcasting from a movie theater, believe it or not. I believe this may be the same one where Muna and Michael and everybody else.
You got to view one of the podcasters' class of 2020 audition videos.
That's right. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So when I put it on first thing in the morning, did not want to get spoiled. I was actually more worried about being spoiled than actually like, okay, I've got to know who the mole is. I just didn't want to get spoiled about the mole. And so that was going to be the most unsatisfying outcome if I just got spoiled. And so got on the treadmill. It was like probably like 7:30 a.m. And within the first 5 minutes, Ryan eliminated. I'm
Heart
like,
rate increased. Get off the treadmill. You're gonna Mr. Big yourself.
What's the twist here? Battle back? What is she coming in like? Oh, this is gonna be controversial because they just eliminated the mole, and then they're gonna bring her back in some way just to throw people off the scent. And then she doesn't come back. And we have a second elimination. I'm like, okay, I know nothing, and it was simultaneously a bad experience and a wonderful experience. I love not knowing what was going on, and I was very satisfied with this, even though I think that there are things to discuss.
Of course.
Zed, how was this for you?
Shocking, as you said. We were all in on Ryan last week.
Were we all? Were all of us in on
Okay,
Ryan?
Josh wasn't, but
I got some comments last week of like, why is Josh being so mean to Ryan? And it wasn't. If I'm apologies.
No,
to Ryan.
I think the case to be mean to Ryan, not like as a person, but as a person on television, has only increased in week 3 because at least we thought Ryan was giving us nothing because she was the mole.
Right.
Instead, it turns out Ryan was just giving us nothing because she was horrible at being on television.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So this guy
and
over
sure
here,
is a lovely person.
he's giving the heat now. He's taking the heat. I'm out.
Please, include me as number one.
Send it to this
Ryan was what? Was
him.
But it did not even seem to like. Again, building off of the mole in season 1, it's like, okay, well, it's a tough spot for the mole. Because the mole's got to come in and, like, in the confessional, just, like, say obvious things and can't really give us anything because they're sort of like,
things are getting more serious.
Yeah.
Things are
the
serious.
hardest elimination
I don't
yet.
know. I like that for Hannah, she's got a tough decision to make. I don't know if I would have made that decision. Like, I was like, okay, generic, but then to find out that was she wasn't boxed in. Okay, again, I don't want to make this all about
well, also I don't want to just be like bathing in a Schadenfreude. Okay, like I don't want to just like be doing that because like as in the moment where I'm like it ain't Ryan and these jabronis all thought it was Ryan.
I don't remember. Did you have a
yes? So
yes.
so then I'm like, all right. So then I got this. It's Deanna, baby. We're going to get up off the ground, and here we go. And Wigler's going to get on the podcast.
What a 3-minute ride this must have been for you.
And get out into the world and get this one right. And it will be my second time picking out a mole and getting it. And then like, nah. Red screen for the cat lady.
Yep. So, okay, now I'm like, where are we going? What are we doing? I know Derek from RHAP was making the case it was Hannah. I'm like, could it be Hannah? I'm like, is it Muna? Boy, we're down to 4 people. I did not know. And I really just felt like that it could not be Sean. And it could not be Sean because Sean tried so hard. And I felt like, in my opinion, ineptly tried to make people think he was the mole.
Yeah.
And I felt like talked about this in his confessionals in such a believable way that I really bought into that Sean had this strategy of I am trying to make people think I'm the mole so they do bad on their quizzes. And we heard other folks throughout the season talk about, boy, Sean is making it blatantly obvious with his sabotage. There's no way he could be the mole because he's trying so hard to make us think he's the mole. And I think the question I'm really left with was this the most ingenious double bluff ever attempted on reality TV? Or was this just a comedy of errors in a way that Sean was like almost like a Forrest Gump character that ended up being able to succeed mightily?
I think a little bit of both, right? Like doing all this obvious sabotage, particularly in front of Michael. And Michael has been saying, it's Sean since some episode in the first week. And we were all like, okay, he's gotten so fixated on Sean, he's going to miss out on whoever it really is. And in the end, he was the one who wins because he's been on to Sean for so long that he could pay attention to all these things. I was never suspicious of Sean as the mole. I'm suspicious of Sean as an ex-cop who loves lying.
Right.
Because he does it for his job all the time, as he says himself.
Did it. Retired. He retired cheerfully for his wife's dental hygienics dream.
Oh my God, what a story.
Are we sure that's even true?
Has anyone ever made like that moment, by the way, like,
yeah,
I'm just out here because of my wife's dental hygienics.
She's pursuing her dream of.
Oh, that's so weak, man. I'm sorry, that was so weak.
Yeah.
You said that's so weak, yo.
Yeah, and then the gay man and the woman have to tell the straight white man it's okay to have feelings.
It was just, it was so funny.
But it was, I have to say again, it was almost like that. It's like, oh wait, is that the reaction that a player that like that? That's not the reaction of a mole. That's the reaction of a player who's trying hard to win the money. We don't know what money. Like, honestly, we don't know if Sean is able to help his wife get closer to this truth because we don't know if the mole gets a prize.
Yeah.
I guess so. He must have got a day rate.
Yeah.
But we don't know. But
is it enough
it.
to keep her in dental hygienist school? I don't know.
To pay off the
loved
loans.
it so much
The
to
loans.
the last
The
second
loans.
when it got down. You knew Muna wasn't the mole. You knew it wasn't Muna. And it came down to, and I completely expected, all right, will the mole take a step? I'm like, okay, it's Michael. Like, you know what? Michael was my pick originally, and I came off of Michael, and I feel so stupid. But Michael's the mole. Muna's going to win, and Sean's going to lose. And then when it was revealed that Sean was the mole, I could not believe it.
It was great. Great TV moment. Really great TV moment. Zed, an Oscar-winning performance from the mole. That's what Sean has in common with Forrest Gump.
It's true. Because when Brian got eliminated, I defaulted back to Michael because I had still been a little bit in the Michael camp last week. I was like, well, but the two of them were together for all these missions, so you couldn't really differentiate them from each other. And when Brian got eliminated, it was like, okay, back to Michael. And I didn't stray from Michael at that point until Sean was in the middle of the two of them. Literally right before he stepped forward, I was like, oh, they put him in the middle because he's the mole.
Yeah.
But I was not on his scent at all.
No, I don't think so. I don't necessarily think so.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I miss the theatrics of the way they used to do it. You know, they do all their executions in like churches or in the middle of a bull fighting ring or some, Gothic castle or whatever. And then when they're revealing the mole and the winner, they'd put them in 3 separate little cubicles and they had to unlock their doors. And I miss that kind of drama compared with just like, you step forward. If you're the mole, just take a step.
With pleasure, Anderson. Yeah. So I loved it. And I thought, so this is a comment that we're getting live as we're here from Cool Person.
Yeah, I want to take a lot of comments today. I really want to get the reaction of everybody.
Yeah. Cool Person says, remember that one mission with the trucks where none of them thought it was Sean? LMAO. And I do remember that. And I had the trucks on my mind as we were going through the final portion of the episode because those were the 3.
That's the final 3.
Muna, Michael, Sean. And yeah, Sean was never picked. Like everyone said it was Muna, but everyone actually thought it was Michael. And here's Sean just skating by. And I just think that's such a great touchstone here in like this final act. Like the final 3 are those 3 who were ID'd in the truck. It's really satisfying.
Here's what I think is so interesting about this, that I don't think that there has ever been, like, again, the Sean's game with the other players, it's hard for me to tell if it was good or not. A lot of people thought he was the mole. Or thought he was acting like the mole, but thought it was way too obvious that he could be the mole, and thus he couldn't be the mole. But there has never been a mole, and correct me if I'm wrong, that has ever gone to the lengths to deceive us at home that this mole did, including go back to that scene with the truck where we got his whole mental anguish over, I filled out my answer on the quiz was he was telling us his answer was Michael, but he was lying and saying it was Muna. Is that right, or do I have it backwards?
I think that's what a bunch of people did. Yeah.
But why are we getting him telling us what he answered on the quiz and lying about that? Like, that is so interesting to me.
Well, because they have to spread out the reveal for the viewer, right? And I don't
think that they've done that in the past.
We'd have to go back and check the tape. But my memory, Zed, is that the mole has to sort of like pretend they're not the mole in confessionals all the way through to the finish. And when Ari says, I was trying to guess who the mole is all season long, at least in the past, it has been presented as if that's an honest thing, that the host actually does not know that Sean is the mole. Anderson doesn't know blank and blank are the mole. So I think that like Sean just has to keep it up in the confessional. But then it also does seem like within that same confessional, unless he's just putting the same shirt back on a different day, he then like, is he like just like wowing the confessional room with like the
Switching
grand reveal?
personas. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the deception of Sean for the people that's out there is assumed that where it's like, okay, if he knows that he's the mole, like really, what does it matter if he's saying I voted for Muna, I voted for Michael? The fact that he's telling us that he filled out one of the, and unless that's like a note from production of, hey, we're really trying to make it seem like that it's Michael, and so then you tell people you think it's Michael, but then try to put your votes on Muna, like really. I guess the issue with there was that the money was going to the prize pot, so right. But I don't know if he knew, like, I guess he knew what the answer was that was going to earn them the money. So he had to sabotage the question wasn't who is actually the mole. The question was, who did the group vote for the most? So, but I just thought he did such an interesting job of trying to.
It.
Yeah, I love it too. Again, I do have some questions about, is this what we want? But I did love it.
I mean, like, he ends up being so theatrical. Yeah, on the rooftop, right? And he's like, "Oh God, no, not heights." And then he's like, "Yo, I'm not afraid of heights." And I think, I don't know.
You know how many times I've been on the stratosphere?
Zed and Jess finished the episode before I did. I had to pause down. I went all the way through it at the reveal. Had to pause down for a while, and then was able to get back to like the reveal montage later. And you both were like, "This reveal montage is like crazy." And I was so excited to watch it. And as I was watching it, I was just like giddily grinning ear to ear with like the photo swap and just like the ways in which like he exuded all of this buffoonery. I was even thinking about last week when I was like, that little liar. He's so bad at lying is what I was saying on the podcast. And like,
but he
I still don't know.
He was. Like, go back to, all right, the dinner task where he blatantly takes the photo off the wall, puts it in his pocket. He tells us, I did that in such a way to make Michael think that I'm the mole so that Michael loses on the task. Like, he's not saying, and again, I don't know if that's like, if they tell him after the fact, like, yo, Michael saw everything you did. And like, oh, okay, I'll spin it. Like,
cool your jets a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I do think that's different to what you're saying, Rob. I was thinking about in these last couple missions that they did, we got kind of similar narratives from both Sean and Michael of being like, I'm going to sabotage for this, that, and the other reason. But the way it's presented is much more Sean saying, I'm going to do this so people think I'm the mole. And Michael saying, oh, I messed up a little bit, but that's good because Muna will be confused because we all know Muna's not the mole. So she's got the hardest job deciding between the two of us. And it did feel like the confessionals we were getting from Michael were more typical mole confessional, like fake mole confessionals, whereas what we were getting from Sean felt more like a typical player being like, I'm going to trick people into thinking I'm the mole. I don't think they usually show that from the mole themselves.
Yeah. It's almost like Sean and Michael had an alliance.
Well,
and
look,
it was, and it was a symbiotic relationship. Yeah.
Abby says this in the chat. Abby says, I bet Sean wanted Michael to win. And in like the aftermath of thinking about this episode, my mind goes back to like the poolside rooftop. And Michael on the other side of the movie theater that I'm currently in. Another person late to the chat, chair showroom. I didn't know that so many of you people like know what chair showrooms are like. Are y'all just like frequenting chair showrooms all the time?
Listen, this audience watches a lot of TV.
Is the Wi-Fi really good?
They might know their way around a lazy boy
in a chair showroom. But that like on the other side of that, and like they're having that conversation. It feels like Zed. It almost feels like. Sort of, I'm trying to think of like who's like a good Survivor parallel for like a final 2-pack. It's almost like a JT Steven type of moment where it's like these two are going to the end.
And JT has completely snowed Steven.
Yeah, I do think
it's like,
so.
yeah, you should bring me to the end. You'll do great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's
and
just-
I think that their relationship was really good. So their arc, I do think, ended up being satisfying. And if Sean is the bull, as much as I love Muna, and I would have been thrilled with a Muna
I was
win.
devastated for her.
Yeah,
I would have been
I
thrilled
think
with a
we can talk
Muna
about
win, but I
Muna
think
separate.
Michael is like sort of like the right winner for Sean as the mole. That makes a lot of sense.
Because
I
it's
think that's
interesting.
satisfying.
Like, go to that last task, and we could go through the task from the finale in a little bit more detail. But Michael and Sean played that final Minesweeper task exactly the same way. They both were. I did the same exact thing. So you had Michael, who is like, I'm going to screw up so that people will like vote for me and think I'm the mole. And you had Sean, who was seemingly playing the same strategy, and it was like the Spider-Man meme of them both pointing at each other as the mole. But for one of them, it was an effective strategy to win the game, and for the other one, I don't know if it was an effective strategy of being the mole, and I guess it was, but it was a very effective strategy of throwing us off the scent.
Yeah. I mean, yes, absolutely.
And I think that Sean was better at, and again, it's hard because they were all stunned, but I feel like that part of the stun was that like Muna told us constantly, Sean is a bad liar. He's bad at this. And again, I don't know, was he so good at this that it came off like he's bad at this? Like he's almost like, you know, a person who's like a hustler at cards that's like at the table,
you
like
know what?
playing horribly.
Right now, we're messing with the Sicilian while death is on the line. You know, like this is very much which cup has the iocane powder in it, right? Like, was he good or was he bad, or was he so good that he convinced you he was bad, or was he so bad that we should have known the whole time? And I think we could like just talk ourselves through this loop over and over again. And I think like oddly, there's like I'm somewhat reminded of like Tony circa Kagayan, not the mole Tony.
Interesting. Yeah,
but like those conversations around Tony is like, is he like a super genius, or is he some total buffoon that is somehow just like going down the hill way too fast that you cannot stop him? And I think there's like some things that like, obviously not as prolific or whatever as Tony, but I think these two cops, these reality cops, like I think that there is like a little bit of a line that I can see there at the very least. I don't know. It was what a ride. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting though, because I feel like one of our major complaints with season 1 was that the mole was so obvious the whole time.
Yes.
And why, I wonder, why was it so obvious that time and not, and they were so bad at it?
Yeah.
That's why it was obvious. Whereas Sean was playing that he was bad at it, at least as he explained it to us. And therefore, that's why we didn't believe he was bad at it.
And kudos to the production, I have to
say. Yeah.
It was such an interesting, and again, I don't know if that was more of a Sean decision or more of a producer decision to ultimately go in that way. But again, I want to get a ton of questions from the audience about their thoughts and reactions to all this. Let's circle back to Muna, who I do think that people felt like, I know from the start, okay, Muna, maybe not the mole, but definitely the winner of the season. Muna had the winner edit all the way through.
Kevin says Muna and Hannah most likely to get an invite to another show.
Even the start of the finale was starting off about Muna telling us, my family were refugees. We kick off the finale episode. And again, this was the subverting expectations at the highest level. What was this? And I go, you know, the results are what the results are. Is it unsatisfying that Muna got such a big edit to ultimately not win?
I mean, it's certainly disappointing that she didn't win, but I wouldn't want her to have any less of an edit as a result, because she's so charismatic. She's so telegenic. I really enjoyed her narration of the season, and her thought process the whole time was really compelling, especially when you had a few people who were just kind of like, yep, I'm doing this, or I'm the best at everything, and therefore I am correct about everything. And then bye.
Yeah.
I'm glad we had Muna the whole time and that we got to hear from her the whole time. Of course, I was devastated that she didn't win. I was rooting for her so hard from day one, but she's so great on the show.
Josh,
I also was really rooting for her. Again, I had said last week that like the one time that I'd ever like checked out Sequester, I remember Muna from that, and always thought that like she really like popped off screen, and I think that was no different here. There were definitely multiple times where I was like, wow. Like multiple, yes. That there were multiple times where I thought Muna could be the mole, and that she would be very good at being the mole. And
there was a non-zero chance at the end of this thing, and they're like, when the mole stepped forward, I was like, it's not gonna be Muna, right?
Yeah.
I got so excited for like half a second.
The thing that really got me was when going back to the breakfast, when they talked about like, and Muna's always the last to come down for breakfast. So I'm like, okay, well that's
busy talking to production. Yeah.
Yes.
She's doing her mole things. She's mulling around, mulling things over. And so I thought it was I think that she goes into that category of like great players who don't win. I think that that's a great archetype. Rob, don't you?
Pretty good.
It's a pretty good archetype. We like it when we got a really good player who gets real close.
And
just
not to take anything away from Michael, who I think was also a really great player and had a story certainly about like we got his backstory about his mom passed away when he was just 13 years old, and the great relationship that he has with his dad, and the reasons why he's playing. And so Michael, I thought, was a very fun contestant.
Yeah,
it just felt a little bit more like it was Muna's story.
Yeah, but I think it's like Michael's story insofar as Sean is the mole, and again, like I think like these two were linked in this sort of narrative way that I feel like Michael being the winner, like we don't get like a huge story about Michael's win, but I think like you finish the season, and for me anyway, you go back to that poolside rooftop. And so Michael's win is satisfying insofar as how it connects to Sean specifically. Muna would have been, as a winner, like a great disruptor of like sort of that dynamic, because I don't think it's unfair to think that like maybe Sean really liked Michael and like winked a little bit at Michael. I kind of get that vibe, but that's based on nothing other than what I would imagine it could be like out there.
Okay. We have a big surprise for our listeners here today, because we have been talking about this wild finish to the mole, and the bat signal went up last night that one of the great mole experts out there had made it through this newest season and wanted to come on to talk about it. Please welcome back.
God.
Fresh off of
Bill?
Ask Dr. Hubicki. Christian Hubicki is here.
Oh, man.
I'm sorry, disappointed.
I really thought it was Bill. I thought he was going to be here today.
Wow.
Talk to Bill.
Wow.
Christian, how are you?
Doing great. Just recovering from that mole finale last night. I think a big finish, I would say.
Big finish. How was the blood on the clock tower today?
Oh, it's good. So I just came from playing another social deduction game, basically the Mole for Nerds online, and so I just finished. Yeah, well, you know, there are the gradations of nerds, as I'm sure if you talk to anybody, they would tell you. And Blood of the Clock Tower is pretty high in there. And so I just got off the line with that game, playing it on Twitch. And now I'm here to talk about a different social deduction game. Yeah, so here the Mole 2, you know, really exciting. They brought back Anderson Cooper, 14 players instead of 10.
Yeah.
What an exciting season.
The Netflix Mole 2.
Oh, that's okay.
Did you not watch it?
You're not prepared.
Did you watch the wrong one? You need to.
Could I come back in a couple of hours if that's all right?
Yeah, we'll bring Christian back later. But thank you for swinging by. It was much just kidding. I have the power.
Oh boy,
I see you in the charge here. But so I finished the season. So I missed everything that you all have been discussing. Yeah. So I'm kind of
well, you know what? Then you come in fresh. We have not poisoned the well with our opinion of this. We're about 25 minutes into this conversation, so would love to get your reaction to the end of the Mole season 2 on Netflix.
I come into the season a little biased. I'm a little annoyed. None of the Mole producers ever talked to me, despite being really loud about it. So I'm already. So I got to check my biases at the door. It's okay. But I went in and my impression was that while in season 1 of Netflix Mole, there was like a really high peak. I felt like kind of near the beginning where I felt like I was feeling my love for the Mole all over again, and I felt that overall it was a lot more flat for me throughout the season.
This one.
This one.
Well,
I thought
you
was
were
more
also
flat.
on the other side of really being disappointed with season 1 of Netflix's version.
That's true. So I mean, like, so maybe it's also possible that, oh, I don't have that nostalgic. Oh my goodness, the mole was back. So it felt kind of more flat. I didn't feel like I was still trying to figure out who the mole was and all that, but it was all right. And I think that I was like, I didn't feel like a lot had terribly changed from the first season of the mole, and I felt like they should have changed quite a bit. But then at the finale, I think that all of a sudden, the way that they handled the actual mole as a production tool, as a casting tool, as all these things, so that it ended on the highest note of the season for me. Where
I agree, they really stuck the landing. I thought in a way that season 1, I think that probably we were higher on the first couple of weeks, and we're more disappointed with the ending.
Exactly. I mean, and we're in spoiler territory, I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
Point, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the idea of Sean being the mole, that's a really interesting mole choice. I mean, I mean, there have been undercover cops on the show, but not like this kind of like amiable undercover cop. And I think that he was like a loud mole. There aren't many loud moles these days.
What does a mole sound like, by the way?
I'm pretty sure we can ask Omer Zahir. I'm pretty sure he can do a mole impression. He's a veterinarian. Yeah. I don't have a pet mole, but I think that so one of the easier things to do as a mole, or the more natural things I should say to do as a mole, is to just blend into the background and be like, okay, I'm not really here, and avoid all the conversations. And I was really worried that that's what the mole was doing. And I'll say fully, I did not get the mole right at all this season. I was and so they did a much better job of hiding the mole. The mole, I think, was a much more unconventional choice in terms of how the mole behaves, and the joy of him explaining in
not joy from season 1,
not that joy. This joy, the elation that he had when he's describing to the audience all in the confessional all the things that he did, that was so passionate and fun. Like, I wish I was feeling that passion and fun the whole season. From people. It actually put it in contrast to one of the weaker parts of the show, which are the confessionals, in my opinion, where you don't know whether to trust them, but they're produced in a weird way that it doesn't feel natural. But then you had him just talking in selfie cam to a phone in his hotel room. More of that. Get more people like with that passion. And then it's fun, and I care about the characters. So I would say overall, the finish was strong, and I think that it carries the whole season actually a little higher than most season 1 as a result of that for me. There's still a lot of way to go, in my opinion, to tap the full potential of the mole. And you can do it. Producers, you can do this.
It's doable.
There are very simple changes you can make that will make that give us that feeling all over again. I see it. Anyway,
it's achievable, and I wanted to circle back and like get some takes around the horn of what we think could be improved for a future season. But just to the point of like the lack of joy in the confessionals and Sean really rising and the ending really popping. I guess my question for you, Christian, but for everybody here is, how is this season going to play on a rewatch knowing that it's Sean? Do we think it's going to be a better season with the ending known? Because I think that often does impact like my favorite seasons of Survivor or my least favorite seasons of Survivor. Like a really great winner story can make what was an otherwise kind of weak season feel like, oh man, I can't believe it's there the whole time. So Christian, what do you think? If you like go back and dial back the tape, are you going to feel higher about season 2 overall?
Well, I'm definitely going to want to hear Zed's opinions on this. Someone I know has rewatched those old seasons of The Mole, but yeah, I think it will. I think it will go better on a rewatch because then you could actually look for the clues, as opposed to the end of Netflix Mole season 1, where it's kind of like I felt like I knew exactly what was happening by the end of the show for the most part. So it's not a lot to take in. Now you can sort of go back like it's the end of season 43 of Survivor or something to say things that Josh doesn't know about, and see what has happened the whole time. And I think that it would bode well on a rewatch. But I mean, Zed, what is your opinion on this as an old school mole expert as well?
Yeah, I agree with your thought that on a rewatch, you'll get to laugh at all of his antics more, knowing that they are for real and not him doing a bad job of trying to get people to think it's him, but actually doing a great job of getting people to not think it's him. And that kind of like double bluff that we've been talking about is like such a bit of a mind flip that I think rewatching it would be more fun than the first time through, especially given my constant frustration with Ryan and Michael throughout the whole season. That apparently it's just them being bad at things and not them trying to sabotage the whole game. But yeah, to your point about the confessionals, particularly, I was thinking while you were talking about it, it's funny that the like very theatrical confessionals of the old mold, it would be in like a dimly lit room in the dark, and they're like whispering, like, I'm thinking about this and I don't know if that's the right thing or if I'm being thrown off on a dummy trail, felt more real than these like, we're sitting in a room at a blank table with a blank wall behind us and everybody's confessionals all look and feel the same throughout every episode and throughout the whole season. And maybe that's part of it. They lack personality in that way. Whereas to your point, you know, Sean's selfie confessionals, we have that technology now and they're giving everybody a phone. They could be in their rooms going, this is what I'm thinking about. This is what I'm journaling. And I think that would probably be more interesting and give the show more of that old school character.
Yeah, for me, it's interesting that I think this show would be better on a rewatch than on a first watch. And I don't know necessarily, I don't know if that speaks to knowing like who the mole was from. And I know people have said like, okay, that's the traitors, but I do think that there is an argument to, you know, to be able to, because there's so much that's hidden from us. I don't know if we could ever, and I know there's a couple people out there, I called it, Sean was the mole, but I just don't know how we could have made that like done that with any sort of like confidence in the way that we were looking for clues that were pointing us to other people like Ryan. And I think that the most fun part of this show was getting to see all the things that Sean was doing to throw people off the scent. Like that, the last 15 minutes of the season was the best part of the entire show. I really like, I was putting dishes away.
How do you capture that and like spread that out, spread that dust across the whole season is a big question that the people who make this show have to figure out. I stopped what I was doing just to stare at the screen with my undivided attention.
Yeah. I rewound it to watch it again. Like it was interesting. It was absolutely good stuff. And look, sometimes seasons are great that you can enjoy on the first watch and the rewatch. I can't imagine I'm talking to people who understand this, who run a television podcast. But I'm joking, of course. But the like that's fine. That's great. I mean, literally right after we finished that season, we actually found the mole, the next betrayal, on and started rewatching. Like, am I a crazy person? Or am I just like where I'm just like have nostalgia goggles for this old season? And Emily and I really sat down and dissected what was different about the confessionals there versus
relationship goals.
I'm a lucky dude. And when it comes one is sort of the style exactly as Zed is saying. Like sometimes it's actually kind of close up and people are just kind of, I think there's sometimes even a producer in the room. Sometimes they're just giving their thoughts and they don't feel that, and they'll even, and I was like, do they still have like the big brothery, like over explain the challenge confessionals? And they kind of do, but they work it in really quickly without stopping the action. And like, it's actually super quick cut for a show in the early 2000s. So like there is something in the style of editing and everything feels so natural. I think a big part of this, I think Gabby would give me, I have to always shout out Gabby whenever I say this. She points out to me, it's about the relationships between the contestants too. And we don't see and if we don't feel like we know the characters and the relationships with other people, then we don't care about the confessionals as much. And that's a big part. I mean, I'm sure you have all talked about is like, hey, where are the dinners? Where are they in their rooms where they're talking
about
their
camp life? We want the camp life.
Camp life, exactly.
We could probably like edit down these challenges. Like the missions could probably be shorter and more time could be spent on the downtime. The only defense that I'll throw out is like, I absolutely felt like Michael and Sean were connected. So that being the through line ultimately works for me. Like that does land, but I don't know that that's spread out so well across the other characters. I did clock, it was a little subtle, that Hannah and Tony had a connection as well.
Yes, it was very deep. By the way,
they went right back. Yeah, it lasted.
Yeah. It also, who got fired by the fact that they did not get the start of this relationship on camera? Like who got fired because they didn't get this? Because
they weren't
go from
bedroom after Jen got eliminated the first episode.
Yeah,
I guess so.
I just think that probably isn't fit for Netflix.
I mean,
well, you know what? But I feel like that maybe at nighttime, because we don't really ever see, like, we saw them move. Remember, they moved into the mansion. They're like, "Oh my god, it's a home," and they were there for like one night, and then they moved. But we don't really follow them up to there. And I feel like that we used to on the old mall, and you all have seen it much more recently than I have. I feel like we used to follow them like upstairs to go. They were going to bed and stuff like that. I feel like that the mole is almost like a little bit more like the Traders, where they film during the day, and then I feel like it's all right, like we're not filming them 24 hours a day. And it seems like that the Tony Hannah thing might have happened when it was supposed to be some kind of a lockdown.
Yeah, this was something I was kind of speaking to last week with us not really seeing people sharing information with each other or forming coalitions of any kind, is exactly what you're talking about, Christian, with like this lack of relationships being portrayed in the show, in contrast with hanging out in the hotel room with whoever ends up being roommates, and they're talking and trying to decide if they can trust the information from the other person and that kind of thing. And then the challenges, I think, are just kind of similar to this Survivor old school analogy. You used to make a help signal on the beach so that this helicopter will come get you. And it was so specific to this idea of being on an island.
Now it's an action movie.
Do this arbitrary obstacle course that we built for you. And I feel like the old school mole challenges were like, we're in this castle and you have to get out, or you have to defend this fortress, or all of the ones you were referencing, Christian, on your Ask Dr. Kubicki podcast last week, were all ones that we love and remember from 20 years ago. Whereas like, what are the ones I watched last week? Other than cutting the wires, I don't remember. And they all feel much more generic, any sort of random spy thing that they could think of, not really specific to where they are and the show that's happening there.
That's a fantastic point, and I will one-up it even more. The blueberry test. You remember the blueberry challenge? Like, you're absolutely right. They can have better, like, these things to be more in
but the
line
like
with
the secret things that you don't even know amazing. Are exactly.
Like it's a blueberry, the blueberry test, like, and it ties all this stuff in together, because one, it doesn't happen in a traditional challenge. It happens at dinner and follows them back to their rooms at night, where they are also part of the challenge again. And like Emily and I watched like the first 3 episodes of The Mole season 2. I'll try to spoil as little as possible from those seasons.
Thank you very much.
From those challenges, you learn what all these people think of the people around them. They have to decide who do they trust to call on the phone to get to come to their room.
Right.
And they're like, and then there's a betrayal, and it changes how the coalitions work in the future. And the coalitions matter. They determine the outcome of the game. And they didn't even mention them hardly at all in either season.
Yeah,
and
the game really never stopped in the old version of the show. Whereas here it feels very much like the missions matter, and that's what's going to be on the quiz. And outside of that, you're all just kind of hanging out, having a nice time, and getting to know each other. But it's far less, well, I have to pay attention to who ate what at dinner because that might be on the quiz, or who sat next to who, or what we talked about. Not nearly as important in this version. So there's just like kind of a lot of fluff in the show that doesn't as directly impact the game itself.
One of the things that we were talking about in the opening, Christian, was the job that Sean and the production did in terms of misleading the audience. And I wanted to know if you had any sort of mixed feelings on the lengths that Sean went in his confessionals, in addition to playing the players, which is also interesting because it seemed like that there were times when he was saying, I'm going to try to be so obvious about my deception so that people won't think I'm the mole. And also then in the deception that he took to lengths that we haven't seen another mole do in his confessionals.
I actually really like that, to be honest. I understand this part of the rule of confessionals is you're supposed to tell the truth. But its central conceit of the show is that the mole is lying to the other players. And because it's a mystery, it also makes sense that they're already lying to us. In every instantiation of the show, the mole is somewhat lying to the audience. So why not?
But lies of omission. And these were,
lies of omission.
Well, these were actual, lies. As opposed to like, I'm just not going to give my direct thoughts on this specific thing.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that if that's even super clear at the outset, I'm better okay with it, because you don't want the audience to feel tricked on unfair grounds. You want to set up the grounds of which the audience will be tricked. Like when we know we're watching a tribal council for Survivor, we know that the decision's probably been made as to who's going home at tribal council, and the person's saying it could be this person, could be that person, right? And then they hide it from us, and then they go. That's a lot of omission, as you're talking about, Rob. I feel like I liked it because it opened a larger window of strategies for the mole, because for the mole to take themselves. Because I think I came in with an overly narrow meta, as they say, as in the things that the mole can and would do. And because he pushed it to, he needs a good player persona, one that cannot possibly be told through completely omission. He embraces it here. The thing I'm honestly a little bit more frustrated about was that the structure of the show was such that it was hard to detect who he was via his actions in the game, because everyone kept draining the pot over and over again.
How much do you think he bet for the exemption when he said, "Yo, I'm gonna start a bidding war"? Yo.
He probably didn't bother. They're all draining the pot at that point. I don't know.
He could have done nothing. He just said it, and as he pointed out, he's like, I said I was going to go for it because I knew that would start a bidding war.
What a move!
He didn't have to bid at all.
What a move!
Yeah,
what a move!
It worked.
It's really incredible. And then he really played this persona of this character who, and I guess like one of the tells was that he kept advancing on the quiz, which is maybe not super believable considering the role that he was playing on the show, of like being sort of like a little bit of like a doddering every dad,
useless dad, as Hannah
useless
says.
Dad. Yeah.
Shots
fired.
That's one thing. I mean, the other thing, he had a completely different. One thing he did differently from my memory of a lot of the moles is that one of my key mole tells is inside information. That's one thing that's incredibly hard for players to fake. And often when players come out with information that seems really suspicious, that's one of the most suspicious things people can do. If you watch the mole, The Next Betrayal, circa 2001, some of the earliest mole suspicions, like, oh, that person put themselves in that position to be offered an exemption. Oh, this person did this thing to do that because they knew it. And sometimes it was even to win a game. Sometimes they would win a game. So I'm like looking at like when Muna is pulling out information and she in a dream believed that the tiger was the correct statue to pick up. Like, it's like that's like I'm reading that as suspicious as hell. But Sean didn't do any of that. All he did was like waste time and be like, oh no, I'm throwing the game for to be like a player. And I think that was different, and I enjoyed that because it opened the world of the moles. I think that where I would change things is in the structure of the payouts of the challenges, so people aren't always so incentivized to completely drain the pot, and therefore give us some kind of signal to latch onto in terms of sabotage where it makes sense. Because the sabotage was something that was hard to track for him. In my first view, I'll probably see it on the rewatch, that in a way that stood out from everyone else.
Right. No, we've definitely talked about that in the last couple of weeks, that because the players kept completely draining the pot, there was no incentive for the mole to actively prevent them from getting money, because it was just going to keep going away.
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead. Yeah,
no,
just quick thing.
Yeah.
There's a quick thing. Sorry, Josh.
Go for it, Kristen, absolutely.
There's a quick fix for that. Just don't have challenges that drain the pot. You don't need to do that. Or ones that take out so much money. I mean, maybe is Netflix, are they looking at their budget and are like, we should really?
I think they were psyched. Yeah, I think they liked what Niche did there. I think
it was cute. My reaction was like, it was cute the first time when Joy did it. Now I'm like, I expected it. I was like, I know these are gonna drain the pot. I was like, so what's the point of all this?
Yeah.
And I think if I cared more about the characters, like from how they were presented to me, maybe I'll be like, oh no, Muna's money. But I don't know. I think so. They just kind of fix that mechanic. I think it's a bad idea. I think that if they keep doing the drain the pot options, I would say stop.
Yeah, you can lose some money, or you can get penalized for touching a bicycle or buying an ice cream, but not, completely lose all, because then what did you do for why did I watch 5 episodes of TV if when I start episode 6 you have $0?
Yeah, well, I do think that it happening 2 seasons in a row like that, I think is maybe not the best. We have tons of people who are watching us live, lots of questions that are coming in. I wanted to throw 2 back to back out there. One from Ben for you specifically, Christian. Who was on Christian's mole watch? And I would like to tie that into the conversation about, here we are 49 minutes in, and like we have really barely talked about the person who won the season. And there was a great comment that Zed flagged from 11 Claws, which was, the main issue is Michael not getting a better winner's edit because he had such a great mole edit. So Christian, let's start with you. Do you think that that's an accurate assessment of Michael's win? And was Michael on your mole watch? And if not, who was?
Well, my mole watch had moved around a bit. Like early on, I was actually on to Muna, but I was like, what? Why would they? Are they going to choose another software engineer who happens to be a woman of color to be the mole? I mean, that big brain play, but they have done similar.
Jessica Liese called it in the beginning when she said that they will choose the mole that is the most opposite in every way from the mole they chose last time. And in Kazi and Sean, that is exactly what they did.
And Jess is not here, but she did submit her feedback to Zed and I.
Okay.
And Jess had a very, very simple reaction to the finale. It is, I love this mole. It made perfect sense, and yet I was fooled. So Jessica Liese is satisfied with the ending. Very satisfied with the ending.
Yep.
Ending definitely the strongest part. I mean, I overweighted in my analysis inside information. That was what I talked to you all last time. That's the biggest thing I look for. But it turns out the mole was not using inside information at all. They were just stepping on bamboo when people weren't looking.
And also, I wonder if somebody watched this show, and maybe we have this person in our audience, they've never seen any other mole season. They didn't watch the last mole season. Were they screaming at the TV, "The mole is Sean, everybody, duh"?
Yeah, I mean, could it just be the curse of having too much just in-depth, not like too
we overthought it.
Did we get hoisted by our own moltard?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly should shake my confidence.
You don't like that?
Overall meta,
You've had better. You've had better.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't steal that joke from me this time.
No,
that's a Rob.
So in terms of suspicions, so who was on my mole radar? Originally it was Muna, just because like I felt like, oh, this is inside information. There was the tower task where she would always seem to be going to directly the right place. It felt to me like in times in the past, without spoilers, where the mole helped win like escape room like tasks. And I was like, but then eventually I was like, eventually got shaken. At some point, at some point, I'm like, I realized I had no idea what was going on. I just kind of defaulted to Ryan at one point, because because again, one of the more straightforward ways to play the mole is just to be quiet and not talk, but and not even react in the moment. But so I was, so wrapping around to Michael, he was on my list. He's one of the few people that was. But in terms of the winner's edit versus mole edit, one thing that you can do to turn a mole edit into a winner's edit is give them a package at the end of the show for the winning player and the runner-up that explains their journey front to back, now knowing this player was absolutely good. And they used to do that. And honestly, that's some of the most memorable stuff from the Mole season 1 and 2, is in the finale, they explain what the winner and runner-up were doing. And it sticks with me to this day, because the journey was fascinating. And you learned everything that was going on, and you'd be like, oh my goodness, they were a genius the whole time. We would have gotten that from both Muna and Michael if we had done that. And I think that's the easiest thing to add to the show. I really think
they have that footage already. They just have to put it together in the right way.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think that Michael had to serve as, both, he's the winner of the season for production, but he also ends up being the most viable red-headed herring that they had to be able to try to, because there's no way, by the end of the show, you're not thinking Muna is the mole. When she completes that last challenge by herself flawlessly after the other
you will
two
not
guys
stop me from doing
obviously blow up. Yeah.
You know what I wish they would be able to do is maybe tell Muna, Sean, and Michael the result off camera, and so when they present them, so that they could have presented Muna first as the loser, because then if Michael and Sean both come out and it's like one of these people won, one of these people is the mole, I feel like people would really be on the edge of their seat at that point, where it's like, wait, whoa, but both of them were like the mole.
Yeah, maybe not off camera, but basically it's like, all right.
Well, they would have to like get their faces set so that
that's
no, I got it. Yeah, or like you keep them like in they're like backstage, and then they're like, all right, Muna, come out, and you give like Muna like her reveal on her own, and then let's bring out Michael.
Yeah, like, I think it would have been the winner out first, and then say, here, winner, here's the key for the mole's door. You go unlock the door because you know who it is, and then they let the mole out, and then the poor runner-up would be sitting in a room by themselves, waiting to be let out.
To be released.
But that gives you that like buildup of suspense and excitement because you don't know until they let them out.
Yeah. They have good formulas for a lot of this stuff, and I understand they want to do their own thing. It's their show now. They don't have to count out everything just because it's old. But there are really good production decisions that they can borrow from that made the mole so much more exciting. Now updated with modern technology, modern reality show things. But I think the biggest structural thing you point out, Rob, the big thing is that they treat it like they're treating. I think I never thought of that they're filming it like the Traitors, on time, off time. And they have to change. That would be the biggest shift they would have to make, is to treat it more like an all-encompassing sort of show. I mean, you can see this in their very few like outside challenge interactions. They come across like Real Housewives dates. You know, when you see in the Real Housewives, you're like, oh, Phaedra, the Phaedra and Kenya are going to meet up at this cafe together. It's like, oh, who do you think the mole is? Well, I don't know. And that challenge was really tough. Like it feels so. That's how they try to accomplish the same thing that they're lacking in the current mole, which is the authenticity of having people behave naturally over the course of the entire duration of the filming.
So one of the things that I think that I will hope that I can remember if we get another season of The Mole on Netflix.
Which is a question. Yes. Renegade, do we think the show is going to be renewed? I feel like it wasn't as popular as other Netflix shows.
I mean, we can say, I don't know if it will or won't, but also I believe we're on to Too Hot to Handle season 6. I think they're on The Circle season 8. So, Netflix has kept making some of these reality shows long after that there is like a real clamoring for them. So we'll see. But if they do it again, I think that one of the obvious things looking back in terms of Sean being the mole, when we take a look at the Grandpa Simpson meme of Q getting out, coming back instantly, if we really start to take a look at like, all right, who is the last person Q would have thought was the mole? His buddy Sean.
Yeah.
When they reveal that it's Sean, he runs away.
I'm sorry, Q.
Like in those videos where they show, black people seeing close-up magic, and then they all run away when they see the trick happen. That's exactly what he did when Sean stepped forward. He was like, nope, I'm out. That can't be right. I gotta go.
I just loved Sean being like, I'm sorry, Q. I'm so sorry. Was
like running around in a circle, like, no.
Yeah.
Sean's reaction was really funny. Like once it was out, like you could like feel like the wind was blowing in your hair because of like the breath of relief he had finally emitted for like holding this thing in. He was he popped. It was very funny.
I think there was a couple of folks that they, after spending time with Sean on a mission, that they went in like, okay, he's definitely not the mole. Happened to Andy, your guy.
Yeah,
he came in with the dad jokes for Andy, and Andy was like, that's not the mole.
Yeah, the players were shocked that Sean was even in the final 3. Yeah. Like they learned who the final 4 was, including Hannah, and then they learned that the final, and they went, Sean?
Yeah.
I didn't like that Sean cut Andy's knots too short.
No,
I did not.
Andy deserves better.
He deprived me of time spent with
Handy Andy.
And as a result, I don't even have an Andy impression.
Nope.
And I really I think it's like, I could tie a knot. That's like as good as I can do, and I feel like that's not even close to enough. So if I've got any gripes about this season, it's that I was Andy out too quick.
I also wish Andy had gone much further. I think that was one of the things that started hitting me early. I was losing people that I thought were great mole like characters, like the kind of mole characters where they have, where they have some back. I would love to see a forensic accountant get some of those like number clues in their mail like they did in the Mole 2. Like I would love to see like that sort of thing. And who went after them? Melissa, I think was their name.
The star of the reunion show, Melissa.
I missed this part. What was she reacting or was she not?
Just that she came out with like the biggest like makeover from the season proper, right?
Some fanfare.
Yeah, I guess so. And like I liked her, and then gone. Like I felt like I kept losing the people that it was like, oh, this people might like Muna, but I also like this person. I want this person. And I know I didn't talk about Muna yet. I remember near the end thinking like, well, if she actually ends up being the mole, even though I don't think she is, either way, she did a really good job, and I think she's really interesting. Like I thought she like in terms of a mole player. But yeah, I think that we missed that. And going back to your thing on Q and how fooled he was, like it was a magic trick, right? I think that the one of the great assets that the mole has is that whoever you get, it doesn't matter. Anyone can be fooled. And when people realize they're fooled, they always give a reaction. Anyone can be fooled. If you think you can't be fooled, guess what? But I think that's one of the things that the mole can just keep giving, and that's where it has longevity. And I think they did a very good job of making sure that they fool you about the mole better, or at least make it harder to like they understand that's a core part of the experience. The thing they need to add is then the strategy people use to deduce whether or not they're being fooled. I feel like we didn't get a ton of the strategies that players would use to deduce the mole. We get a little bit of it, but in prior seasons, there were times where a coalition, strange word, of two people thought the same person was the mole. They said, we're both going all in on this person. One of them went home. Guess what the other person has to do? Decide if they trust that person. Did they actually vote the way that they said that they would? Like a Natalie Anderson, not to get Josh Tilley said. And then say, oh, that means they're not the mole, and they completely just juke in a different direction to a point where they have a close to winning game. And so, yeah, that tool set is not being shown to find to deduce the outcome.
Well, can we talk about another thing that maybe the show could do? This is from a very nice guy in the chat. Who says, would the mole benefit from mole confessionals, where they speak in a dark room with a voice modulator so you can't tell who they are? Zed, is the mole missing Bandage Man?
Bandage Man.
Like, do we need Bandage Man in here? Is that a genius idea?
I do think that could be interesting. Something that that just reminded me of is that the old version of the show would have like, you'd get messages from the mole. The mole would leave like ominous notes at the dinner table or something. It'd be like, this is what's coming up. XOXO, the mole. And the mole is so much less of a character really in this version of the show compared with the original seasons, where there is always this looming specter.
Was giving you like the cutout ransom notes, right?
Exactly.
There was a cheekiness about the character of the mole that existed in the original version. That
I believe that happened on Who Done It. Also, the killer would send notes to the table.
Yeah. I think that's fun.
Give us a Bandage Man. That would be great. I think that is something we've all kind of talked about, is having additional perspective from the mole and not just getting it in, a little mole.
A mole
Sock Puya, maybe.
Sock Puya.
Yeah. And not just getting 10 minutes of here's what I was doing for the entire season, right at the very end. To the idea of Bandage Man from The Genius, for those of you that don't know what we're referencing, I've been thinking since we were talking about how to fix, as we always are, how to fix the fact that the mole does not get any money from taking money from the pot. And I think Jess suggested the idea that everybody starts with a pool of money and that you want to protect that, and that's all going towards the pot at the end. Something like a garnet system I think would make a lot of sense. If you're all gaining money that ultimately will be the final prize, but you can use it to buy advantages for yourself along the way, and overall you're gaining more and more of this currency in the game, I do think that, and then the mole is taking money for themselves. They have some of that pot too. And if they get to keep, then they get to keep that. I think that could be an interesting way to keep moving currency through the game without this motivation to fully drain it all the time.
That's interesting.
Rob looks like he hates this idea.
It's a fundamentally different show.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not even like getting into whether or not that would be good or not. I just feel like that I can't ever see the producers adding that layer onto.
I don't think.
This.
Yeah, like my feeling is that the version of the show that we are getting right now is a show that the people who are making this show are solidly happy about.
Yeah.
Like I think like we want it to be a little like smarter and sharper and cleverer than they really care about is sort of the vibe that I catch, and I catch that a lot through the casting of the show. That I think like for me this just sort of reads like cookie cutter Netflix casting by and large, not all the way across the board. And I think it's got that sheen to it as well. And I think like it's very inherent in the structure. So I mean, this is fun, and this is literally what we're here for, right? Like we are the overanalyzing crowd.
I want all shows to be more like The Genius.
You are all the overanalyzing viewers as well who listen to a podcast about them all. So we like let's ideate and let's do it. And on the off chance that like our voices hit the right ears, like that's great. I just, I'm cynical about that.
I think
really
like the show
this
as
cast, it exists is pretty close
for the
to
most part. Like I thought that there were a lot of good hits, and we haven't even talked about Hannah today, who I felt like was really one of the stars. And that was another point in this these 2 episodes when she got eliminated. I'm like, up is down, down is up. I have no idea what's happening.
I loved that Final Four. I really did. I was very pleased with the Final Four and basically any direction it could have gone in. So that was a really good feeling to have for the vast majority of the final 2 episodes. Was like,
and I thought Sean was the worst. I was like, how is Sean still here?
Yeah, I mean, and when it comes to the to Hannah, it's also one of the times where the eliminations made intuitive sense. From like she's like, I'm going to split the votes, okay, which is a dangerous thing to do at Final Four, and it made sense that she went home. Like, and I think that I kind of wish that I'm begging for the show to give us more context as to how the strategy moves across the course of the season. Now they don't care about me; they don't return my calls. It's all right.
I care about you, Christian.
That's.
Do you want to say it back?
Love you, Bay. And we got it. And I think that it's just like I think that the thing that has made the Mole a cult hit is the stuff that they're not interested in putting in. Like I think that's a great example.
Like the little, like the spy jinx.
Yes.
Yeah.
This isn't like it's like original, of course, original Mission Impossible. But let's talk about the Tom Cruise Mission Impossibles. Like OG Mole, first Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movie. It's spy jinx. The set pieces are cool, but it's really not about the set pieces. It's about how convoluted who the mole in that movie actually is. Yes. And in like later Mission Impossibles, it's like, wow, Tom Cruise really tried to kill himself this time, huh? Very visually impressive, but maybe not that sharp. And I think like that's sort of like the spectrum. Like I don't know how you get back to De Palma Mission Impossible with the mole.
It feels very when you all said that there is very Netflix reality. That's what it feels like. This is their social deduction game of the Netflix archive. I don't know anything about how the Netflix world works of this, but that's what it feels like. It feels like a Netflix show. Even the documentary style of the confessionals feels like I'm watching like the Don't F with Cats documentary, for which they of course cast someone from. Which I was very glad. I thought it was a good poll. I was like, is that the lady from the documentary?
Christian, you have a very vast knowledge of reality television of all types. The chat is really shook about your Real Housewives lore.
Oh, well, I mean, partly because when I lived in Atlanta, we realized that we would frequent the same restaurant that I think Candy was accused of having a sex dungeon on Real Housewives of Atlanta. So anyway, we have
that might be something this show is missing, a sex dungeon.
Didn't have Christian Hubicki brings up a sex dungeon on my bingo card.
Sex dungeon.
Yeah, sorry to bleep that there, Rob, but that's
regular dungeon.
Yeah, so but it was
Dungeons and Dragons.
I like, so we used to watch some of the Housewives shows, but I think that there's a lot. So like the idea you're talking about the Garnets, like I think that I'm kind of in a way I'm looking for the same thing you are looking for, which is a slightly more accessible to genius, accessible like Devil's Plan, like one where I don't have to like maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, Zed, but like I love this Devil's Plan, I love Genius, but I have to pause the episode to even understand the mechanics of the game I'm about to play, and that they're about to play. And I think that, but the core mechanic is one where there's currencies involved, and I think that's great. I think that the mole fundamentally is where, and I think that they did a better job with, is that the mole is just a tool of production to facilitate entertainment for the show. Like, and I feel like they talk about how the mole's job is to throw money away, but like when we watched the original Mole, I felt like it was, they would throw money away a lot, but then sometimes they'd be the hero, not only just, but to allay suspicion, like for the audience.
Right.
It's like they're for the audience's tool, the audience thing. So I feel it's the same impulse as you. And I wish, and I think that it's just, I want that like really thoughtful intrigue that I'll get from the original Mole or from the Genius. And I want that infused in this show. I fear it's because, so I always thought that when they got their hands on this property and they wanted to make it again, they said, people really like this, but people who don't like it think it's too weird and complicated and cerebral. So let's dumb it down. Let's dumb it down a bit. That way people will follow. That's what I think they think. I don't think it's that
but I think something that could, if that is what they think, help and make it more like the old version is to have the host narrating what's going on in the game the way that Anderson did with, in this next mission, players are going to have to do this. Lavia is going to have to make a choice about whether she wants to do this thing, which might make people feel this way, or do this other thing, which will make people feel this way. And those sort of voiceovers, I think, also played into the like spy-y nature of it, of like, we're being let in on a secret or being let in on the thought process of the players from the like overarching godhead that is Anderson Cooper, or I guess now Ari Shapiro. But I think that is another easy thing they could do that might help merge the two worlds.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of Ari Shapiro, I was listening to I was in Los Angeles, and then All Things Considered came on the radio, and Emily was like, "You know what that is, right?" I'm like, "No, that's Ari from the Mole." He sounded to me completely different when he's not doing like the I'm the evil.
He doesn't have his murderous eyebrows looking at.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I was like, is that the same person? I was impressed by the range.
Yeah, it's a podcast. You would have no trouble narrating it.
For those of you listening at home and not watching the YouTube video, you missed Rob doing the an impression of the tiny teacup while making really intense.
That's really good. Yeah, that's very very gifable.
Yeah.
Christian, what do you think about Ari as the host?
I thought he was fine.
Yeah.
I think that and again, nostalgia goggles. I go back and rewatch Anderson Cooper every time, and I love him a little bit more. I think because he played it straight at the right times, and and when he's hamming it up, it's for a very particular challenge purpose. And I think part of it, the guy should have dinners with the contestants. And
would it improve things if we let Ari Shapiro have a baguette every once in a while?
Yes, baguette. Also, an
apple,
like random sandwiches.
It's just like where he's razzing.
Would it help if he was on the side of a road with a bicycle, just like eating an apple as they passed by?
It feels, you know what? Honestly, this all comes back to get around. I think it speaks to the way the show is now structured as a traders like show. There are times where Ari is in host mode, has to deliver information about the task. This is his opportunity to do his hosting duties, a little out improvisation here or there, as opposed to him just hanging around in the challenge in an unstructured way, kind of like Anderson's just around.
Like have Ari at like the gala where they have to identify the people at the gala, and Ari could like grab a champagne flute and come up to them and be like, so how's it going? Like, what do we think so far? Like, just like inserting him in that kind of space a little bit more.
Yeah, leverage the talent. Go on, please, Rob.
I was gonna say a couple other interesting points from the mole subreddit. There is a thread about how this can't be a coincidence. Michael, Sean, and Muna were the top 3 mole suspects in episode 5 with the truck deliveries, and they were the final 3 in the end. Is that a coincidence? Is that the people who were playing the strategy of make other people think I'm the mole ultimately did the best in the game? Or was there some sort of like die that was cast where when the mole inadvertently helped 2 other players by putting it out there that they were the top suspects from, like, was there some sort of a cognitive bias of like that, okay, this is what other people are thinking, so this must be true. Even though they weren't the moles. Yeah.
Did everybody else start going after Muna and Michael as their main suspects?
Confirmation bias, I should say.
Right.
Yeah, that's the one.
Because they all agreed. The one thing they all agreed was it's not Sean. So now we're all going to focus on Muna and Michael.
We all agreed on that too, by the way. Let's just remember
that happens all the time. It happens all the time. Like, I mean, like one thing it's really fun when you play these social deduction games, whether it's like it's like Mafia or Werewolf or Among Us or Blood on the Clock Tower, whatever it is. Sometimes someone just mentioning an idea of a candidate, you're like, I didn't think of it like that. And if it's publicly said in such a way, you'd be like, there's almost a fear of missing out component. It's like, oh, what if I'm missing out on what everyone else is actually in on? And it takes a lot of self-discipline and or overconfidence to be like, I don't care. And so that's I think there's something to that.
Yeah, Josh, you missed out on Rob's well-reasoned argument for why Ryan was the mole in our week 1 roundtable that kept Jess and Rob and I all on this train, and you never got on it because you weren't there at the start.
Yeah. And obviously didn't go back and listen to it. So.
And I don't know, when we go back to the first challenge and all the reasons why it couldn't have happened, like I do wonder, like, could those 5 people one of them have gotten in the game?
Yeah. I hope that those 5 people are on season 3.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Another
I was
interesting one.
Number 2.
Yeah, I guess maybe if they, keep the mask on them, they could use them again potentially, or on a different Netflix show. But another thread that's on the mole subreddit asks about if Michael broke the game in terms of just even Sean does an interview on the Netflix website talking about how he had to ask production, are there 2 moles here? When Michael is moling almost as hard as Sean, does that really break the game in some way, Christian?
This is why I was saying last week too, like why I thought like Deanna could be the mole, because like I've been honest the whole time. I haven't done anything, and like in my mind, like a very viable mole strategy would be to do nothing, because these people are gonna mole themselves into oblivion. So you could just do nothing, and you could be the mole. And this is the opposite of that. But like for Sean, maybe being surprised of like, isn't this my job? Isn't this supposed to be me?
Mm-hmm. I understand a lot of people who watch the show who say, oh, the fun that the mole as a game format is somehow broken because people want to sabotage the pot to look like the mole. And I think that it is not as much of a structural problem as some people seem to think it is, because somehow we managed to run 5 seasons of the mole before this where there wasn't a problem. That's at least that's my big example. I think so. The question is, what changed? Did the casting change? And that's hard to quantify. Definitely some of the games change where you can drain the pot. I take that out. Don't do it.
Drain the pot.
And I think that so there are structural things I would change, but they're not the actual game mechanics of how many moles, what the moles are allowed to do, what the players are allowed to do. Do they break the game? It's creating an environment where people work together with coalitions, where coalitions are so important that, you could do something to make everyone mad, but rarely do those people get to the end. It happens on occasion where you're an island, right? But typically the quizzes are even structured that even if you know who the mole is, you need information from what happened in some other part of the challenge that you weren't there for to try to win at the quiz. So there are dynamics to the actual quiz taking that feed into that. I'm not sure that happened this season, but certainly weren't shown. And those things are what disincentivize someone from just being such a huge, I'm the mole, I'm the mole, I'm the mole. It's like, no, you're not. We want you out of the game. Like, I'm not saying that this should have happened to Michael, but if you're concerned about a player that's basically a parasite on the pot, there are mechanisms that you don't have to vote them out. There are ways to do it implicitly on the mole, more indirectly, which is what the mole's all about. It's more indirect than Survivor, and therefore, at times, more fascinating.
Well, that's more like how the traders works, right? Like if you have a faithful that's not helping you accomplish what you need to do, it benefits you just as much, if not more, to get them out of the way because you don't want them there at the end to split the money with you. And as Sandra points out, they got to go sometime. So you might as well get rid of them if they're getting in your way and then deal with the actual threat closer to the end.
100%.
Yeah. All right. Anything else we want to hit here talking about the mole finale?
Just how funny it was to have Michael in that suspended rope challenge. It was an absolute disaster and I couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah, around the time that Zed saw that happen on the show, just scrolling back through the chat with Zed to make sure that I have the exact this is from Zed. Zed texted the Mole Patrol group chat, "Yo, suspend me on ropes. I'm ready."
I would have been great at
that. Yeah.
And I'm a foot shorter than Michael, so I wouldn't have been kicking everything in sight.
Well, I would have kicked everything. I'm short, but I've got like restless legs. I have to constantly be shaking my legs and like
also
moving my
holding
feet
your
around.
legs up like that requires a lot of core strength.
Just like always snow angeling in bed. Like everything would have just
like Deanna in the
yes. Get me up. Yeah,
I think one thing I will say about the show. So, like, look, there's always hope for this show. I think that the finale did leagues to help that this season of the show, and and I think to tie a lot of this stuff together in terms of what people like about the show, can like about the show, is that if this is like a spy sort of movie, it's not always fun to watch spies bumble around unless it's like it's a comedy film.
Austin Powers.
Austin Powers, at that point, that's the premise.
Yeah,
and
baby.
I think that what enjoying the sometimes when a mission goes off without a hitch, a complicated mission goes without a hitch, can go a long way. So I think that and that's another thing that when people just kill it at a challenge, or even one player just kills it at a challenge, which we talked about season 2. I bet I can look at Zed and they would know what I'm talking about. There was one really long word scramble in season 2. It was a bunch of letters all in a row.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Do you remember what the result of that puzzle was, Zed? I bet you do.
The answer?
The answer?
Yeah. Mistrustfulness.
You remember that 20 years later because it was amazing because the player was awesome at it. They pulled it out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
Nowhere.
And this lines up really nicely with one of Christian and my favorite, and Rob, one of our favorite scripted shows of all time, Better Call Saul, or even Breaking Bad, and like the competence porn, right? Like, like when the characters are just like executing something flawlessly, and like you're not even being told what's going on because you know that the plan is going to go off, so you don't need to hear what their plan is, because if you do, then something's going to go wrong. And on those shows, when they go just exactly right, it's extremely satisfying to watch. You don't really get that here very often.
No.
Yeah, I think it's I know we're wrapping up here. I feel like some of these puzzles, I feel I can't leave without saying they kind of did the baby version of some of these puzzles. Like even even the water pouring puzzle, like they let them do the cheating version of the water. There's a way that they let them do a cheating version of that. I remember for whatever reason, Emily and I had to be up at like 5 a.m. when the second group of episodes dropped, and it was like we had to stay awake. And I literally held my phone in front of her. We're gonna watch them all, and I'm watching it bleary eyed. I'm looking at this puzzles in the Indiana Jones challenge. I'm like, okay, it's 13. Okay.
Yep.
The first one is the mirrored one. Okay. I mean, you can count the squares, or you could do a mathematical pattern in order to count the squares for you. So you don't think, okay, all right, I'm going to bed. All right. So like they did, like they could up the challenge of these puzzles a bit.
They're failing enough as it is, Christian.
they got to fix something else to make sure that I would never cast aspersions onto the reality show contestants themselves, but they have to find a way to have people accomplishing more complex puzzles. Is what I'll say.
All right. Christian, thank you for joining us. We'll leave it there. Christian and I had a great talk, some 2.5 hours, answering all sorts of questions about science and pop culture and Survivor on the latest Ask Dr. Hubicki. You can catch that on the website and on our YouTube. Christian, anything else exciting coming up for you?
I mean, fun stuff. I mean, like it's summer for me. I just in my work, I'm a robotics professor. I just ran a little mini summer course actually for a consortium of historically Black colleges to learn robotics controls techniques. That was fun. That was a fun thing I did recently. And but otherwise, you can find me on my escapades on the website formerly known as Twitter. CHUBICKI. Chubicki, which is Chewbacca's younger brother, of course, on Instagram and on Twitch, where I play Blood on the Clock Tower, these games of social deduction. It's a lot of fun. And I gotta say, thank you so much for having me on, where I can just bother Sam and Rob, and you're like, okay, and they're like, okay, you can come on. Oh, thank you. I'll find a way to come. Thank you.
We love to hear everything you have to say about the mole. So thank you for joining us. Anytime you want to pop on.
Fantastic. And thank you. I love hearing all your opinions too. I know it's good. It's rare. I can't talk to strangers about the mole because they'll just assume I have some kind of psychiatric disorder. So I'm glad I can talk to you all. Thank you.
Well, it would be weird to just like walk up to a random person and be like, yo, the mole.
What do you think about the mole?
Yeah.
Is that weird?
Should I see a dermatologist? What do you think? Okay. All right.
That was a good joke.
Thank you. Brooklyn Zed, what's coming up in your world?
Not a whole lot, but shout out to the folks in the chat who have said they'd like to see me elsewhere. I would love to see me elsewhere too. In the meantime, you can find me on Twitch as well at twitch.tv/hardrockhope. I'm Hard Rock Hope wherever I exist on the internet. Christian, thank you for answering my difference engine question. I don't know how much more I understand it than I did before I asked, but I'm trying to understand. And I'm glad that we got to chat about some OG Mole and some new Mole together as well. And it's always a delight to be back here with the Mole Patrol.
Okay. And Josh Wigler, what's coming up for you?
Yeah,
you're in the market for a new chair.
Yep. Sure am. Here I
Several
am in Chairs R Us. No, I'm in a movie theater podcasting. More podcasts in movie theaters, I think, would be a good thing. I would love to get involved in that.
We've done some.
I know. Yeah. Let's do more. I think that's fun. Mole Patrol live from a movie theater. Probably not going to happen anytime soon because we don't think this show is coming back for at least a year would be my guess.
Maybe 2026. Yeah.
Everything's happening on the We Know Scripted TV front here on RHAP. We Know Scripted TV. So if you are looking for coverage of House of the Dragon, The Bear, conversations about TV generally, go subscribe to that feed. It's been a lot of fun. Rob has a website.com/scripted. I also love the Mole Patrol, and my biggest regret is that I missed the first week of the podcast and only got to cross paths with Jess once on this season of the show, but psyched to have crossed paths with Zed twice this season as well. The Mole Patrol was really the beginning of our podcast adventure and friendship, Zed. So I am a huge fan of the Mole, if only for that reason, for bringing us together and it blowing out to include these Netflix shows and Rob coming in and Christian coming in and all of you getting to watch us. We've had some questions in the chat about can you all go and podcast about the original seasons of the Mole. Those do not exist as video podcasts here on YouTube, but Zed, Jess, and I did go and watch the original seasons of the Mole back during lockdown in 2020 and 2021 as well. And we had such a great time doing those shows. And those are spoiler free. If you do not know what happens on those first 2 seasons of the Mole, neither did I. So it was a spoiler free walkthrough through those 2 seasons of the Mole. So you should go seek that out. Go check out the Mole Patrol podcast feed. No video, but really fun podcasts that I think you'll enjoy. So bon voyage. Bon voyage to Ari, to whoever the future host of the bowl is. And best of luck to whoever the mole is for season 3 of Netflix's iteration of the show.
Is this all just sarcasm, or do we know something?
I just assume. This is an assumption. You know, it's
just
sort of a tradition.
Pattern assessment.
A grand tradition. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then we've got so much going on here on RHAP. We just got done with a marathon pressure cooker of a Friday into Saturday. If anybody wants to go back and check that out. Plus, Josh and I are talking about Game of Thrones and Survivor 46 over on House of the Mermaid Dragon.
I'm enjoying it. I'm really
out.
liking Survivor 46 on the House of the Mermaid Dragon. We just got through the Banu era. I'm a Banu apologist. Big Banu guy. Maybe the least
uphill
surprising
from
thing,
here, Josh.
Yeah. Maybe the least surprising thing would be that Josh Wigler loves Banu. I'm one of the million hearts. My friend who listens to the House of the Mermaid Dragon asked me in person the other day, like, was that a bit on the podcast, or do you mean? I was like, I mean it with every single quarter of my heart. Big Banu guy.
Big Banu guy.
Banu. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. We'd love to hear your comments about what you thought of The Mole season 2 on Netflix. Be sure to make sure you hit subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon. Take care, everybody. Have a good one.